I've got a pool motor, so if you hear in the background, that'll go away in about 6 or 7 minutes. So Mike, it looks like nice weather over there.
Oh yeah, I figure it's my chance to get outside. So by the time this is over, it'll be too warm to be out again until the sun goes down. So
That's right.
I'm on the patio right now.
I woke up a little bit before the alarm this morning. I said, this is the last chance you have to go out for a walk. So I fast walked a quick 2 miles and got back in here and got into some semi-presentable clothes.
Yeah,
north of the equator.
yeah, we probably should do one more survey question. Ask how many people are wearing long pants and how many people are wearing shorts.
I saw some pictures from, this was early in lockdown when somebody was actually still holding an in-person event, but it was a National Speakers Association gathering, like the local chapter. And they had a happy hour that night where you were to dress like your Zoom persona. So everybody was like this on top and shorts and sandals on the.
I saw a retail survey that was showing that tops were selling at a really strong clip and nobody's buying pants right now.
But as soon as lockdown ends, then everybody's going to be buying pants 2 sizes larger than the ones that.
Well, my wife's a teacher, and she said that when they start on campus, that they're going to have an AA and a Weight Watchers meeting on site.
Probably true.
And then there was a survey that said that the average time that people start drinking right now is 4:36 p.m. So anything after 4:36, you're behind the curve.
That's right. You're in the conservative side of the median.
Yep. Once I introduce you, Mark, I'm going to mute myself. If you need me, just ask for me to chime back in, but I'm going to turn a mute because since I am outside, if I've got planes or the pool pump going on or the wind blowing, I don't want it to distract.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It looks like we've got 7 people on plus us, right?
Right. Okay, I'm only showing, okay, yes, attendees. Let's see who we've got. Kristen Brady. Now, Christine Zhao was the woman that you had met.
Yeah.
Like she's on.
Hi, Christine.
Rachel is on, one of our board members. Okay. So.
Oh, good. Yeah, I had talked to Rachel before. Rachel, thank you for tuning in, coming in, attending.
Mike, at 4 after, and there's 7 people. Do you want me to wait still a few minutes?
All right. Why don't we go ahead and start?
Great.
So you give your presentation, then you can open it up for Mark and I.
Okay. I just want to remind everybody that in order to receive CPE for this presentation, you need to stay on logged on for at least 50 minutes, and you need to answer at least 3 of the poll questions that will be asked throughout the presentation. So Mike, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our CFO Masters class series. This is the 4th class that we have in our schedule, but unfortunately, due to coronavirus, it's actually the first one that we're presenting. I want to thank Mark Boundy, our presenter, for working with us to be able to present this on a Zoom conference. And Mark has grown businesses in a variety of industries for 25 years, amassing wide-ranging experience in sales, marketing, new product development, and product management. He helps clients find, win, and keep more business more profitably. He's led firms to be value and price leaders in a wide variety of product and service industries. Mark started Boundy Consulting LLC to leverage his expertise to clients, mostly in the sales performance area. Ultimately, he formed Value Clarity, packaging his expertise into courses and consulting methodologies available electronically and through affiliates. So Mark, again, thank you so much for presenting this morning, and the floor is yours.
Mike, thank you very much. And Robin, thanks for your help. Thanks for making it in, everybody. I'm going to start sharing. And are we on?
Yes.
Great. So I come at this topic from having led and managed P&Ls for years in my past, and then I became sales leader, sales consultant, but I've always been very tightly attuned to the fact that sales and discounting is a huge profit leakage for most companies. And I think of when a salesperson discounts as an expense, as a category of expenditure. And in my experience, there's not a lot of CFOs who track it like it's an expense that needs to be tracked and controlled. So I hope not, but I may be about to ruin your day. And let's start with a reminder that every dollar you discount is a profit dollar, and you may not even track where those dollars go. And you almost certainly, when you're granting discounts, you probably don't have an objective, rigorous discounting or giving a price exception process. And as far as I have been able to research, a majority of sales organizations don't even have any profitability component in their comp plan, which means they aren't even incentivized to deliver profitable growth. When you put those things together, that's a little bit frightening. And that's why I ask, am I about to ruin your day? So, yeah, let's start with a quick poll. There we go. 100% of the people. One person is saying that discounting or pricing is best determined by the salesperson, sales manager, the CFO, or an objective assessment from all parties. And we've got kind of a split here between a multi-person party and the sales manager, and everybody agrees that it shouldn't be a CFO so far. All right, so I can see why somebody would say, hey, it's the sales manager's job. And in a situation where sales and the sales manager can determine customer perceived value, and a sales and sales manager are objective in saying, yes, I sold all the value there was to sold and I have to discount, that ideal doesn't take place nearly as often as it should. And so I was looking for an objective assessment with all parties, because what we're looking for is a comparison of our price against value. So I can see why you'd answer sales manager, and that's okay, but we'll get to why I might why I'm going to disagree with that by the end, but why I hope you're going to disagree with that by the end of the talk. So remember, discount dollars are profit dollars. When your salespeople discount, your cost of fulfillment didn't change. So that discount, which with no cost impact, means that that discount dollar also came off your bottom line. And there can be good reasons to discount, but salespeople don't always discount at only the most appropriate time. The vast majority of salespeople that I've run into that, and myself and other colleagues can probably account for 100,000 business-to-business sales opportunities. And I can tell you that the vast majority of the time, salespeople tend to discount their way out of trouble rather than selling their way out of trouble. And it's as bad as that is from a profit standpoint, discounts cost more than those profits. They train your customers. Also, price is something that declares value, which is something contrary to what you were taught in basic economics class, where price is just where the supply and the demand curve meet. When you, as a real world consumer, go in to see a designer garment of some kind, that price tells you something about how desirable and how prestigious that garment is. The price declares the value of the garment, not the other way around. So price, when you're discounting, is declaring that your value wasn't as high as you thought. And so you can actually hurt your sales with a lower price, which is very contrary to what traditional economics tells us about a demand curve. So any questions so far? And by the way, when I'm in presenter mode here, I can see the Q&A screen, but I cannot see the chat screen. So if you've got a question, by all means, I've got the Q&A screen open, but if you put your questions in there rather than into the chat, because right now I cannot see the chat. So far, so good? Yeah, let's do that quick profile. Discounts are profits for so two people think your company, but discount is profits for your company until they're given. And as soon as you discount, that profit goes away and they become profits for your other company, because your customer doesn't have to spend that money. So that increases their profit. So every discount dollar is a profit dollar transferred from your company to your customer's company. Good? All agree? Any questions on that? Okay. So these are some old numbers, but McKinsey researched Fortune 1000 companies, and what they found was that if those companies had experienced either a 1% price decrease or 1% price increase, 1% price decrease reduced operating earnings by 8%. And that is if on average they had sold the exact same things to the exact same customers, but discounted them by only 1% on average, operating earnings would go down by 8%. And this is a simple mathematical relationship. What this means is on the year that McKinsey did this study, the average operating earnings in the Fortune 1000 was 12.5%. The reciprocal of that 8%. These gentlemen, Amara and Roriello, did it with 5,000 companies in 1992, and they found that a 1% increase in price discounting changed profits by 11.1%, which means that their operating income for those 5,000 companies was a 9% operating income. Again, it's just a simple arithmetic. So if you can look at your operating income of your company as a percent of revenue, take the reciprocal of that, And that will guide you to the percent change in profit that your sales team is giving away if they only ask for 1% discounting. Think about how much you would love to show an 11% increase in your profits to your CEO. And that is something you could do if you could get your discount, if you get your sales teams to discount only 1% less on average. And as I like to say, when was the last time a salesperson only asked for a 1% discount? So here is kind of the discipline, and this is kind of the outline of the rest of the talk. I want you to understand your discounting or your price exception process that you have. Start tracking the performance, develop a tracking system, track it, and then start doing something about it, building your value selling acumen. So let's start with that discount exception process. So this is kind of typical of a lot of companies that, excuse me, excuse me. This is typical of a lot of companies I've worked with. Typically, sales people will have the discretion, without even asking anybody, to discount the first X% off of the price. Then if they need more discount than that, they have to go to their sales manager, have a discussion, and the sales manager can prove up to something a little bit higher, say why. And then there might be one or maybe two additional approval layers, which might include, when you're in sales, that means going up to God. The other alternate, the explanation they say, is go to the sales prevention department. And I'm cynical enough to know that salespeople sell their discount their way out of trouble. And so stop taking the rap that there's that you're sales prevention. This is insisting on some rigor in the discount, but this is kind of typical of the process. So what I'd love to have you do, your typical, so yeah, where does that typical process begin with? You're right. It begins with the sales manager, but actually, between those two answers, the sales manager is best. But type in the Q&A if you can think where the process starts even before it goes to the sales manager. Mike, I don't know if people are putting it into the chat because I can't see. Mike and or Robin, which is fine. It actually,
in the chat.
Yeah, typically it will start with the salesperson who gets the first couple percent, the frontline salesperson. Thank you, Adam. It starts with a frontline salesperson who gives away the first couple of dollars before anybody even tracks it or measures it. And that's kind of scary when you think about it. When you think that price is the biggest expense line that has the biggest leverage on profits, the fact that you don't know and you don't track, that becomes even more frightening to me. So your first step is to find what is your process. And second of all, I want you to figure out and ask and challenge people on what are the approval criteria at each level. What does a salesperson, what does a sales manager need to prove in order to say, yeah, I guess we have to discount? And look at those approval criteria that get used and ask if they're subjective or if they're very objective or somewhere in between. You also want to find out what you're going to be looking for ultimately is how closely is that process followed? Even as imperfect as you're probably going to find out it is, how closely is it followed and how evenly is it applied? That is there one sales manager who's really good at gaming the system and that sales manager's salespeople get all of the discounts? All right, so here's the thing. If you don't know, or if you can't track the process, I think we've just found the first place to start. you can't measure your discount spend until you know how that process works. So next, let's develop a tracking and reporting system. Now that you understand your process, let's figure out, put in place a system to track and report your discounts. And I would like to figure out, I'd like to have you know how many dollars are going, and I'd like you to figure out if you can track them by salesperson, by sales manager. Like I said, is there one sales manager who's better at gaming your system than the other sales managers? Is it a certain customer? Is it a type of market? Is it a type of product that's getting all the discounts? Is it happening at the end of the month, end of the quarter? Which means, are you training your customers to expect discounts? Is it whenever a certain competitor shows up, you have to discount more? So I want you to know what the justification in whether it is objective or subjective. I think that is, thanks for the poll, but I think we need to go to poll 4. There we go. So what's the goal of tracking this? Thank you. This was not a difficult question. Thank you. But that's right. We want to know who's impacting the company profits, and what to do about it. This isn't about punishing anybody. So everybody got this one right. Great. Any questions? How many people out there of your attendees, how many of you have the ability to track at this level of detail already? Just yes or a no in the Q&A. I see one no. Yes, but we don't do it. John, that's really honest. Thank you. So can you see why this is important? When sales pricing dollars have the highest leverage on your profits, and I know every CFO I've ever met tracks different kinds of expense categories in some detail. And here's an expense category that is the expense category that has the biggest leverage on your profits, and you're not figuring out where it's going. That's a big deal. All right, so next I want you to analyze and track it some more. So what clients typically find is that their discount spend is concentrated on either in the sales or the sales management who are best able to game the system. Maybe some of the lower skilled salespeople who tend to discount their way out of trouble rather than selling their way. Sometimes there are some high performers. One time I was in a sales force, I was in the top 5% of the company for profitability and the top 5% of revenue. Most of the other folks who are in the top by revenue were nowhere near the top in profitability. So a lot of them got to where they were by discounting, finding a lot of deals and discounting them. And so I was kind of the exception of high sales performance at a high profit. So it's not impossible. Sometimes we find, you're right, we get our whiniest customers or the ones that we've trained to expect discounts. Now, there can be some really valuable information, but if you have a whole bunch of these top couple bullets where you have the whiny customers, the best trained people, the lowest skilled people, the salespeople who discount their way out of trouble, you can't find the valuable business information that is if you've got price discounting pressure and lower pricing power in very competitive markets or with certain specific customers, if you hide that valuable data under a pile of garbage discounting, you can't make good decisions anymore. So, and here's one other significant thing is that I talked to the head of one of the big sales research houses. It's called CSO Insights. And he sold the company to Miller Hyman Group about 5 years ago, and Miller Hyman stopped tracking this. So this is 5-year-old data, but he said he was tracking it every year for about 15 years, and it was very steady that only about 25% of sales forces had any component of the sales comp plan based on profitability. That means 75% of the sales forces were paid to not care how profitable the business was. You can't do that. You absolutely can't have a comp plan that's disconnected from the profit motive. And one of the typical things that I hear is, oh, it's so hard to measure profit, or we have so many internal transfer costs that profitability is really hard to calculate. Well, find something that gets you close. Find something easy to calculate that gets you close and put that in the comp plan, because then you're going to drive the right behaviors even if you didn't get the accurate to the second significant digit measurement of profit. Okay, so don't accept any excuses for not putting profitability in a sales comp plan. Find a way to do it. Okay, so this is because salespeople behave as they're measured, and if your comp plan doesn't care about profitability, neither will your people. And if you, in your leadership, offer some clarity about the discounting behavior and how important it is and how seriously it impacts the rest of the company, you can start managing profits. One of the things I hear, and this isn't just a club, this is also a carrot. One of the things I hear from a lot of sales leaders is frustration that they don't have a seat at the leadership table. People don't listen to them. They don't respect them enough. And so sales doesn't have a seat at the table, so to speak. And I would ask that sales leadership, if you run the only department in the entire company that doesn't care about profit, why would we give you a seat at the big boys table? Why don't we work together to get you to care about profits, get you to get your salespeople to start performing towards profit, and maybe that perception of you not deserving it will change. So I think there's a significant stick there for a lot of sales leaders, and you can help explain that to a sales leader, because you know darn well that you've gotten every other department in the entire company to care a lot about profits, and one only cares about revenue regardless of the profit. Okay, so here's what to do about it. There are 3 significant players in a system of building, selling, and pricing value. And you can see I crossed out the word sales and I put in all customer-facing roles. In the last 30 years, I've seen the number of customer-facing roles, especially in my technology and high-tech B2B companies. I have companies that have 15 different roles that touch the customer, only 2 or 3 of which are sales roles. There might be appointment setters, inside sales, outside sales, but you can have bid prep, demo folks, project management, client success, application engineering, customer engineering, tech support, installation, project management, and on and on and on. And so I want to include all the customer-facing roles. 30 years ago, when there's only a couple, it was okay to tell the rest of them, just stay in your lane and don't talk to the customer about value. So I'm kind of adamant about broadening from purely sales to customer-facing roles. If you don't agree with me, go ahead and keep the word sales in that top bubble. Then you've got a second group, the product and marketing, who designs product and who understands the value proposition. And sometimes marketing gets wrongs. I'm an old product marketer. And so you need some great interaction between all of those customer facing roles. Remember, some of those customer facing roles that aren't in sales have trusting relationships with people at the customer that sales will never have. And so they've got some perspective that sales will never have. And so they need to be included in what value do we really offer. And then we have you in leadership, and that is we have a profit motive. If we're going to pay product and marketing to design and build highly valuable products, we need to charge enough in price to be able to continue to have those investments, to continue to make ourselves competitive. And so in my practice, I kind of put myself in the middle of those three roles and help product and marketing communicate better, help those customer facing roles understand, build, sell, and price value. And so that's kind of my role in how I see the CFO, those sales roles and product and marketing fitting together and working a lot more collaboratively. So here's something that I tell my sales clients, right? When a customer says your price is too high, I want you to hear your value is too low. And rather, if you hear and you listen to it as if they said your value is too low, you're going to start acting your way and selling your way out of the problem rather than discounting your way out of the problem. And so we've got to incentivize them, train them, coach them, and accept the fact that they've got to sell their way out of trouble. And sometimes if the value is too low, then we have a great way and reason to discount. Any questions so far? Is there another poll here? There we go. And this seems simple, but in the stress of a moment, oh, I should have shared that. Everybody got that right. I should have shared the results. Robin, if it's still there, you can feel free to share those with people. But in the stress of the moment, it's really easy to react with price and react directly to a price challenge with price discount, especially if you weren't incentivized to get any price in particular. So it's a real easy thing to fall back out of. And the less experienced and less mature you are as a salesperson, the more likely that is to happen. The more habituated, even if you're a tenured salesperson, you can do this wrong pretty easily. So where do you as a CFO add value to the sales price? One is you want to track the justifications for discount spend. Was it because our value was too low? Because the competition? Was it? And what was it about the competition? And what was the price of the competition? What do we find out about the value of the competition? And why didn't we sell? Did or did we not sell the value? And so we want to put some objective, or what I call objective adjacent, kind of objective there. I often have discussions with CFOs on this next slide, it looks objective, but the reality is it's objective adjacent, but it's a lot more objective than most salespeople use today. And then I think you need to insist on a profitability component in the sales comp plan. And don't accept the excuse that profitability is hard to measure because you've got internal transfer prices or allocation of overheads. Just build a formula that is easy to measure and gets close, because it just needs to be close enough to drive the right behaviors. It doesn't have to be perfect. You do need to have something that drives the right behaviors. And saying we can't get perfect, so we're not going to do anything is the wrong approach. That I can guarantee you. Any questions on this or comments? So here is, right, all right. So this, and the CFO on an ongoing standpoint should stay involved with tracking who claims the most discount spend. And actually, NBC, I'll show you what the next best choice. If your offer is one of the final two, and the next best choice is the other one. I'll tell you what that means. This slide, I should have explained that better, but I'll show you what that is in the next slide. So I want you to know what the justifications for discounting are. Pushing for an objective measure of customer perceived value and not to accept the whiniest salesperson, the whiniest customer. And by whiniest, maybe I really mean the one who's best able to manipulate your system. And so you can also provide some ongoing consulting on the sales comp plan, making sure people know why it's there, and if there are difficulties in applying it or using it, or it's not quite driving the right behaviors, get it figured out and help to consult on that comp plan. So here is how we objectively measure value. When I am working with one of my sales team clients, we start with the price of the next best choice. Human beings and groups of human beings making buying decisions take all of the available options and quickly narrow them down to the final two. You know that when you send out an RFP, you insist on 3, which is everybody on the buying team's final 2. Constitute the final 3. But when they're in the conversation with those final 3, I think we all know that one of them gets kicked out fairly quickly on some fairly cursory criteria. And so it is the final 2 that really happens in human perception. So the price of the other one, you plus the other one. And if you have any direct use impacts, like we're easier to install, we last longer, we have a longer service life, we have we save some money not in the budget of the organization that's going to buy it, but in a different budget. Then there may be some competitor differentiators, right? A competitor is better than us at something, so that actually moves it down negative. And I didn't have a good way of going down then back up. So you don't follow this diagram too literally. Then there's maybe some indirect value creators, which might be your delivery, which saves on some inventory carrying costs, some of your responsiveness, reporting guarantees, things that you throw in. And finally, there are often some personal value creators. Harder to measure in dollars, but if buying from your company is going to give some key person at the customer's company, make them look good, make them look like a hero, and possibly get in line for a KPI bonus or a promotion, that's not a benefit to the business, but it's definitely a benefit to somebody who has that decision in their hands. And so once you add and subtract, add all of your advantages and subtract all the competitive differentiators, you get something called the full value price. And that's the price that if you charge that price, the customer is theoretically indifferent. So we call that the indifference points. And remember that these impacts and these calculated values there's some imprecision, and that's why when we say objectively, I'll put quotes around that, air quotes around the word objectively, because these numbers are all our estimate of the customer's perception. All of this math has to be done in your customer's head, And your salespeople have to have a conversation to understand what math your customer is doing. And it sounds hard, but it's only hard if you've never done it. If you do it, there's salespeople out there that do this organically and naturally. And there's a lot of salespeople who have been trained to do this. And there's a mountain of salespeople who don't. So here is the full price. So our price that we should decide on is, theoretically, we could charge 1 cent less than that full value price. And theoretically, the customer should buy from us. But if our estimate of the customer's perception is inaccurate in any way, we might still not get the business. So we might back off on that based on our understanding of the imprecision. We might back off of that for a variety of different reasons, but there is a win-win price anywhere between that full value price and the price of the next best choice. And if our salespeople didn't have the conversation to do have any of those conversations to understand any of those direct use impacts, they're going to come to you and say, well, the price of the next best choice is right there. We have to equal that price. And so now you can see that discounting your way out of trouble when you haven't sold your way out of trouble leaves a lot of profit dollars on the table. Because remember, every dollar between the price of the next best choice and that full value price, every one of those is a profit dollar. Thoughts? Tell you what, I'm going to apply it. This was an actual price. I was product manager for a wire and cable product. This was a ribbon cable where all of the conductors on the ribbon, all the cable are flat in one dimension. And the cable would run in a flexible boom, kind of rolling, almost like a tank tread. And it's what's called a rolling flex in a robotic application that went into a paper mill. And so this was on a scanner that went into a paper mill, which is a really caustic, chemically harsh environment with a lot of heat. And so it had to be the cable couldn't be regular, cheap lamp cord plastic. It had to be this fluoropolymer called PVDF. Another acceptable polymer would be Teflon, but it wasn't as tough. So the next best choice was a company that made a Teflon insulated cable, and it was $3.75 a foot. My cable was much more reliable and made that robot more reliable. In this particular case, because it was in a paper mill, when this robot went down, the paper mill went down. When the paper mill went down, the paper mill had $100,000 an hour in lost revenue. And as a condition of their buying this robot, they had asked this vendor of this robotic equipment to guarantee uptime. And if there was unscheduled downtime, they were to pay $100,000 an hour while they repaired their robot. It took a minimum of 10 hours to replace that. And that's if the technician was standing next to the robot when it failed. So forget the time it takes to ship the stuff, get the technician next to the machine, but we just conservatively figured just the 10 hours of installation time. And then it was 65 feet of cable and there was 10,000 hours mean time between failure. We did this math with the engineer at the robotic machine company, and we calculated this $1.54 per foot differential, right? So 10 hours at $100,000, there's $1 million in cost, times what is the small percentage of chance that we're actually going to get bit by that, times divided by the 65 feet of cable, which gets us a per foot price. Now, this cable went into, I've got a picture of the cable track it went into, and you can see some little fingers up near the apex of that rolling flex bend. My cable, because it was stiffer, could use a lighter weight track because it didn't have to support the more limp cable, but it also happened to be one that had these little fingers. So the track was less expensive, 20 cents a foot less expensive, but because it had those little fingers where you could lay the cable in and then snap the fingers shut rather than fishing it through from one end to the other, it saved installation time. And at, you know, whatever the landed labor rate was on the assembly floor, it saved them $50 in assembly time, which was 7 cents a foot. Now, I had a disadvantage because my cable had a little bit less. I had to, long story short, we had 15% scrap in what we shipped them because we couldn't ship them. When they ordered 2,000 feet, we didn't give them one 2,000 foot length. We gave them random lengths to be no less than 30 feet or 60 feet. And so 15% of the cable they bought from us had to be scrapped. And so that was a penalty of 94 cents a foot. And then they agreed that we were much more responsive in challenges. And I've had people pay 20 and 30% price premium. So I thought this 10% price premium for our greater responsiveness, if something were to ever go wrong, was in the ballpark. And so we came up with that full value price of $5.82 a foot versus a competitor at $3.75. After we'd done the math with the customer, we said, I've got great news. The price is $5.17. You're getting a huge value. And they agreed. And so I sold at $5.17 a foot versus a competitor at $3.75. By walking the client through this and making sure they had done the math, and this became not my estimate of the value, but it was our estimate of the customer's perception, because we forced the customer to do this math for themselves. And so they believed that it was worth $5.82. And customers will let you do this early in the cycle. They won't let you do this during the price negotiation phase. So your salespeople have to be the one doing it, not your legal folks or anybody else. Okay, so that's all I have. So you can see that that is a very objective way of measuring the value. And if we had done this math and it had come to $3.81, I would have matched the competitor's price at $3.75. And I would have been perfectly comfortable matching that customer at $3.75, saying, I'm worth $3.85, but I want to make sure that I get the business. And I know that they will tie break in my favor. But I had done the objective math to find out what my value is. So then I knew what my price had to be. What would happen if your discounting, your price exception process forced salespeople to show their math? Show the math of what they had walked the customer through. And if you haven't done this, why am I giving you a discount? So, do you want to open it up for questions, Mike? Well, I guess we have one more poll here. It's the beginning poll. Adam Miller's asked, while we're doing this poll, discuss the efficiency of setting the correct price to begin with versus going through the discount price. Adam, really great question. After you've gone through one of these calculations, you know what the correct price should be, and you don't have to go through a discounting process, usually. There are times in industries where you know that a purchasing person is going to be compensated for the fact that they negotiated a 5% or whatever percent price discount from you. And you want to buy that discount, that purchasing person's favor. So maybe you set a price that already incorporates that pre-engineered discount for the purchasing agent in it. But you're exactly right. Some of the analytics systems that I've seen for setting a correct price look backwards and average the achieved prices that you've gotten in the past to set a standard price that everybody should be expected to stick to in the future. And here's the challenge I have with those. I love the idea of using analytics, but those analytics as part of their data input is the prices achieved by salespeople who are crappy at selling value. So given your unskilled salespeople at the skill level they are today, here's the prices that we achieve. So let's satisfy ourselves with that as our floor. So I guess there's lots of ways to answer that. Setting the correct price. What is the correct price? Do we settle for an average or an analytics-based price based on what our unskilled people have done before? Do we have our product and marketing folks do this typical math with a customer, like I did in detail, and saying, hey, you should be able to get these kind of value premiums, and teaching the salespeople to walk through that kind of math as they go as part of the sales process. What is the cost of failure? And so forth. Adam, did that help? Thanks. So how about if Robin, can we promote everybody to panelist or get everybody to speak?
I can go through and allow everybody to speak.
That'd be great.
So I'm going to do that right now. I'm doing that right now.
Okay. And I'm going to stop the share. Mike, I believe that if people want, they will be able to get copies of this deck.
Correct. As soon as this is over and Robin has processed everything, she will be sending a copy of this out to all participants. And if you didn't notice on the last screen, Mark's contact information is on there, so you can reach out to him directly with any questions that we do not cover during the presentation here. And let's see.
I muted everybody. They just have to unmute themselves. Some people do.
Yeah.
They want to talk.
I've also, on my name, rather than my name, I've renamed myself from Mark Boundy to my email address. And I will also put that in the chat if you want to get a hold of me. Noops, it's M-A-R-K at Boundy Consulting.
Yeah, it shows corrected here on the monitor screen.
Yeah,
right.
The correct one is showing underneath your picture, but the chat needs the K. Yeah. There we are.
All right. So, any comments or questions? Did this help?
It does help, but one of my questions I always have, and I always tell salespeople, the best tool you have is be willing to say no when someone continues to try to drive your price down, and see how real their demands are. I think salespeople are so afraid to lose a sale that they'll do almost anything to get that sale in the door.
You're absolutely right, and there's layers underneath that. There are people, and purchasing people go to how to negotiate prices down class often twice a year, and salespeople don't get how to stick to your prices but once or twice a career. So think of the preparation, that the differential in preparation for that conversation, and think of how well or how poorly we've helped salespeople understand that. The salespeople who understand their value, understand where they are in bargaining position, which means you've done some of this, some or all of that math that I talked about, then you can have pricing courage that's built on something more than just bravado and guts. You have pricing courage built on absolute understanding of the customer, their business, and how your product or service affects their business. And that can be a really non-stressful thing. That can make those price negotiations really fun when you're a salesperson, and can make that salesperson feel really successful. So I love the idea of have some courage and don't be a wimp about saying no. But if we can coach and train a salesperson to walk through building that value in the customer's mind, then that salesperson has been prepared to say no with absolute conviction because they know what the customer's really thinking.
When you look at what the margin difference is when you take the discounting out and minimize that as much as possible, and then you look at a current situation like we are right now, you have the ability to survive economic downturns a lot more if your margin is stronger. And when you look at the impact that discounting has on your margin, you see how important this conversation is.
Yeah.
And having been in customer facing roles, product, marketing, and sales roles in my history, I don't know if that's bad because I've been job hopping or it's good because I have a wide spectrum of experience. I suppose pick your side, but salespeople can view CFO and the people who are challenging them on the need to discount as the sales prevention department because, they don't understand. And well, you do understand, but you don't understand what it's exactly like to be them. And so we need to provide more than just, that crabby person who just told me not to discount and to, suck it up and be courageous. We need to provide salespeople with the training, the coaching, and the tools to say, here's our corporate expectations. You're going to know the customer's perceived value before we discount down to it. And if the customer's value is lower than our stated price, we're willing to talk. But if you are guessing that the customer's perceived value is below our price and you haven't done the work to know it, I'm not sure that I should, as the company, I don't know that it's fair for me to expend the company's resources because you didn't do what you're supposed to. And so it's a matter of expectation setting and then providing them the tools to meet those expectations.
Mark, we have a comment in the chat box from Christine. What if the value proposition to the customers are hard to quantify or they are just not fully convinced?
Christine, you're absolutely right. If they're hard to quantify, there's always a way to get to, to try to quantify it and to have a good faith conversation with the customer. If they aren't fully convinced, that's actually oftentimes I'm not going to say always, but oftentimes it's a deficit in how well the salesperson walked the customer through that convincing process. When I did that arithmetic on that piece of ribbon cable with the customer, I could have thrown out, hey, I think that, we're more reliable and that's got to be worth $1.50 a foot. If I had just said that, they wouldn't be fully convinced. But what we did was say, what is the cost of failure? What is the predicted frequency of failure? And let's just do the math together. And when we did the math together, we were able to get that $1.50 a foot without even assuming any shipping or traveling time of the cable and the technician next to the robot. We just said, let's assume that the technician has the cable next to the robot, and we'll just give you the 10 hours it takes to replace the cable once they're there. And we got the $1.50 that way. And darn well that it was going to take 24 hours to get the cable. Well, it was going to take minimum of 12 hours to get the cable and fly a technician first class to that thing, somewhere in the world, because we know paper mills aren't next to airports. Christine, did that help?
Yes, it did.
Thanks. Anybody, anything else?
Okay, if that is all the questions, again, Mark's contact information is available for any follow-ups that you have afterwards. We have met our time limit here, so we're running out of time. We can stay on a couple more minutes if anybody's got questions, but if not, Thank you everyone for your attendance today. And this conversation has been recorded and will be available, but also Robin will be sending out the slide deck sometime in the next week or so. So again, thank you guys very much.
Thank you all very much.
Thanks,
I really
Mark.
appreciate it. I'll stick around and answer any more questions if anybody has any.